Imagine, 102 years ago, on this very day, November 13th, 1913, somewhere in Hartford, Connecticut, you could be listening to Emmeline Pankhurst Freedom or Death speech. But instead, you get to hear about it from us and her amazing influence she had on women's rights. Adriana will give you a little more background on Emily Pankhurst.
Emmeline Golden was born in England in 1858. She was the oldest of 10 children, and the majority of them were boys. Her parents were huge women's rights advocates and abolitionists at the time. Emily was raised in a time where women had absolutely no rights. Her mother was a feminist, and this inspired Emily to follow in her footsteps to advocate for women's rights from an early age. She attended her first women's rights meeting at age 14, and from the time she was born to the time she got married later on in her life, she had the ideals of feminism in her brain. Although her parents were big into women's rights, her brothers were prioritized, and this bothered Emily because she thought that just because they were boys, they didn't deserve special treatment. Later on, she married Richard Pankhurst, who was also an activist. Together, they worked together to change the government in ways that they both saw fit. He encouraged her to stand up for what she believed in and to make a change. Together, they had 5 children, and one of their daughters, Christabel, grew up to be a women's rights activist just like her mother. They even rallied together later on. Whether it was the family she was born into or the family she created for herself, Emily Pankhurst's family was always active in women's rights. This gave her speeches passion. Because it was how she was raised, it came naturally to her to have these ideals. She had the desire at an early age, and this influenced her speech. The speech itself, Freedom or Death, was given in Hartford, Connecticut on November 13th, 1913, which is exactly 102 years from this very day. She was on a tour to raise awareness for women's rights and to gain allies for their right to vote. Carl Rollison says in his academic article, A Conservative Revolutionary, Emmeline Pankhurst, that in the 18 preceding months to her speech, she was imprisoned 12 times. She would protest for what she believed in, get arrested, go to prison, get out again, and the cycle would repeat itself. She was furious that she couldn't stand up for what she believed in without getting in trouble. This gave her speech effectiveness because it added emotion. Because instead of hearing about what happened or seeing what happened, it actually happened to her. This also gave her credibility, because she was a direct example of what happened when women stood up for their rights. No one could argue if it was or wasn't happening, because it had actually happened to her. This fueled more people because they actually understood what had happened. Next, we will go over the causes of the speech.
Emily grew up in a very feminist family along with her mother and father. She wanted to help women get the right to everything that men had. She wanted to have equality. She was sick of women having no right, and they couldn't do anything about it or change anything that they wanted to do. She wanted to show direct influences of the government and explain that the government doesn't always know what's best, and that women are as good as men are in the government. She was in prison 12 times and went back again and again. The government was unjust. In this way, no women had rights, and they had unfair punishment. The men felt that women were treated more gentler in prison, and that when they were to get in trouble or get arrested, that women were gentler and they were treated better than men were. Now we'll talk about the audience and who she gathered in front of. She gathered in front of the Connecticut Women's Suffrage Association, which was led by Katharine Hepburn. She gathered there to talk in front of people who had a vote and a right to say and had a say in things. This was men, specifically businessmen and powerful men, along with the government and public. She wanted to get a rouse out of the public, and in her speech she says she has to make more noise than anyone else in order to get heard. She wanted to explain her movement and not defend the right to vote, and by this she set up hunger strikes in prison and also broke windows of like powerful men's houses and businesses, and did a lot of property violence and damage. She had firsthand experience as a soldier and convict within the movement. As a soldier, she was the one who put everything together and started everything with the hunger strikes and broken windows. But she was also a convict and was in prison multiple times. And according to the Woman in World History, a biographical encyclopedia published in 2001 by Anne Comrie and Deborah Clemser, Emily was arrested 12 times while the government used the new tactic called the Cat and Mouse Act. Her speech had a great influence and impact on women's rights. It impacted women's rights to vote, and by 1918, women could vote, but there were qualifications to it. Not every woman could. You had to be over 30, and there were also if you owned a household or lived with a man who owned a household. June 4th, 1919, the 19th Amendment was passed, and that allowed all women to vote. So within 5 years of her speech, they saw changes to the women's rights to vote and to also be equal to men. We don't see this today as much, and we don't notice it that women and men have equal rights now, but back in the 1900s, it was a big deal, and not everybody had the right to vote, and that was not fair to women. Next, Taylor will summarize the main points of Emily's speech.
In this speech, Pankhurst lays out her motivations for pushing for suffrage in her particular way. She justifies tactics that she and others have been using in England. She declares their determination to fight to the death, which is literal because one of the tactics used is going on hunger strikes when in prison in order to gain the right to vote. Pankhurst, in November 1913, to present and intensify the need that women have to keep a combative spirit in order to give their free viewpoint and being part of the public affairs on American society. Here are a few lines that I will explain from the speech. Well, they little know what women are. Women are slow to rouse, but once they get determined, nothing on earth nor in heaven will make women give way. And so, this Cat and Mouse Act, which is being used against women today, has failed. These few lines express that men do not know women's true power, and when they come together, nothing on heaven or earth can stop them. And the reference to the Cat and Mouse Act, calling the system the cat and the woman the mouse. Now, here is Maddie with the rhetorical analysis of the speech.
Emily Pankhurst's speech, Freedom or Death, was informative, but it did have certain aspects of persuasion, considering that she was trying to start a movement to get more women's rights, and she was talking to the audience about getting these rights enacted. Praises of the speech was that Pankhurst uses lots of examples to relate to men and everyday people. For example, Emily Pankhurst states in her speech, Freedom or Death, "I am here as a soldier who has temporarily left the field of battle." This quote, to me, relates to a lot of the men, and I feel like this is more of a personal touch to them. Pankhurst also brings emotion into her speech by stating that the movement for women's suffrage is the hardest of all fights. She also uses pronouns like you and I, which brings a personal touch because you can relate to more things like that. I also believe that Emily Pankhurst effectively conveys the injustice of women by talking about how she was imprisoned in her speech. A couple criticisms of the speech, I would say, is that she could have expanded her audience. I feel like it might have impacted her message. If this speech was done now, in 2015, I think that she should have had a lot of reporters there and had been broadcasted on the TV, just because that would give her a more diverse audience, and it might I think it would help her speech. Also, the speech was very lengthy. I believe it was 13 to 16 pages, which if you're not like a civil rights activist or a women's suffrage activist, it might be very long to sit there and listen to something like that. Now we're all going to talk about what it means to us. Personally, what it means to me is now women have the right to vote and a lot of other rights, but it's something that we take for granted a lot. But back then, they were fighting for it every day. What does it mean to you guys?
To me, it means that you need to fight for change if you see that change needs to happen. And it obviously applies to women's rights, but it can even apply to other aspects of life, no matter what. If you see that something is unfair and you want it to change, you need to fight for it. You need to take it upon yourself and not just expect others to do it. You actually have to put the work in and fight for what you believe in, and it can actually happen.
To me, this has taught women now today that even though today we don't see it as much, women are now working more and not staying home with their kids, and that was a big thing where women were supposed to be stay-at-home moms and not go ahead with their career and have what they wanted to in the workforce. And now, because of everything that happened in the past, we don't see it now, but it really did change the views of women and how they don't have to be stay-at-home moms anymore. They can be working women.
What I took from the speech was women have as much equal rights as men do, and when women get determined, there's nothing on this earth that can stop them. Power to women.
In conclusion, we have heard a summary of Emmeline Pankhurst's Freedom or Death speech, influences and the context of the speech, as well as a rhetorical analysis. This speech showed that rights are very important for women. So, although you are not listening to this speech 102 years ago on this very day, we hope that you have learned just as much from us.
Thank you, and take a bow.